Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Hillsborough Town Board of Commissioners August workshop. And whether you are tuning in via YouTube or all of us gathered here on the screen, we're glad that you're with us tonight as we continue to meet remotely. And we can go ahead and do the roll call and then we'll open the work session.
Commissioner Bell.
Present.
Commissioner English.
Present.
Commissioner Ferguson.
Present.
Commissioner Hughes.
Present.
Commissioner Lloyd.
Present.
Mayor Weaver.
I am also present. Thank you so much, Sarah. Good to see everyone. The workshop is now open and we can move on to item number 2 for agenda changes and approval. Any changes to the agenda? Seeing and hearing none, do we have a motion?
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Moved by Kathleen, seconded by Mark. You can roll call the agenda approval.
Commissioner Bell.
Aye.
Commissioner English.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Ferguson.
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Commissioner Lloyd.
And the agenda is approved unanimously. Moving on to item number 3, our consent agenda. What's the pleasure of this board?
Move to
So moved.
approve. Sorry.
I think that was maybe a move by Kathleen and I'll call that a second by Rob. The internet is a little jumpy.
Commissioner Bell.
Aye.
Commissioner English.
Aye.
Commissioner Ferguson.
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Commissioner Lloyd.
And the consent agenda is also approved unanimously. Moving on to item 4, in-depth discussion and topics. We have a really big, important item on our agenda tonight. Item 4A, collection system needs, update and recommended path forward to accommodating growth and needed sewer capacity and its impact on planning. This is a big, important stuff. And I'm glad that we've set aside, this workshop to really give it our attention. And we can go ahead and get started and welcome Marie. You're going to start us off tonight.
I am. Hello, everyone.
Great.
That sounded like a big fancy paper title, like I was an abstract, but we're going to get through this and I'm going to share my screen. And I need to grant it permission. All right, I might need to rejoin in a second so it can record my presentation. So bear with me.
No problem.
To fill the dead air just a little bit, I'll let everybody know that both Shannon and Stephanie are in the audience. So if questions related to more their area of expertise, or they may pop in from time to time to stress points, but I just wanted to let everybody know that they are also present.
Great, thank you. Thanks for being here, Shannon and Stephanie. We know you're here out there.
Sorry about that. Hopefully this will work. Can you all hear me? Okay. Let me get back to this presentation here. All right. Did the presentation come up? Yes, great. All right, let's get started. I did slide this slide into the presentation just now because I realized I didn't give you an outline. So basically what we're going to go over is some background data again, a brief recap about modeling, the phase 1 collection system model results, then the phase 2, which you have in your packet, the whole report, how this is going to impact planning, future discussion items, and some direction needed tonight. I'll just remind everyone that this is a huge, huge topic, as Mayor Jen alluded to. We can't solve all of it tonight. So we're going to introduce you to the scene and discuss the impacts. And then we'll need a little bit of direction tonight, but we'll focus on some more heavy duty topics in the coming months. So just to recap our wastewater collection system information, we're not dealing with water tonight. We have a 3 million gallon per day permitted wastewater treatment plant. It was built in the 70s. We had one major upgrade so far. We may be nutrient limited to handling 2.2 million gallons a day, and that's an average rolling month, and that is due to the nutrient limitations of not only our process, but what we can discharge to the Eno River. Right now, our rolling 12-month average is 1.11 million gallons a day. And to put that into context, I found a 1980 something master plan for our wastewater system, and they predicted we would be way over the whole plant capacity by now. So I guess one thing that we can look positively upon is that we have grown a little bit slower than anticipated in the 80s because we would have had this discussion many years earlier by now. So our initial sewer pipes were installed even before we had a wastewater treatment plant. They discharged to the river like many other utility systems. We have all sorts of materials. We have done some rehabilitation through pipelining over the years, but we really have not done any upsizing of our existing sewers that were installed back in the early 70s with the wastewater treatment plant and even earlier. So they've definitely lasted a long time and are doing their job, but they're not going to be doing their job in the future if we want to grow how we're planning to grow. Just a snapshot of this, not going to get into the details, but our last 12 months of average flow, I just wanted to point out this peak in January of this year, we had 4.5 inches of rain. This is basically demonstrating that we have a leaky sewer system. As I mentioned in the March presentation on the phase 1 modeling report, we do have lots of sewer basins. Sewer basins are areas that discharge into a pumping station and then pump somewhere else, or just encapsulated gravity sewers. But the main river basin, the main basins we're going to talk about tonight is the river sewer basin, and that is to the left of this green line that you see in the picture, and then the Elizabeth Brady Basin, and that is to the lower right half of the green line. The red line shown is our entire service area boundary. It encompasses our in-town and out-of-town infrastructure. So just to recap on the modeling from the March presentation, we talked about inflow and infiltration, the leaky sewer system. Inflow and infiltration, we call it I&I. It's bad, but it's everywhere. In fact, much of it even comes from the private side sewer system. If you recollect in the phase 1 model, that was more of an estimated modeling effort based on just some peak measurements at our wastewater treatment plant. We applied a rainfall event and where we thought we would grow and applied those flows to certain manholes in the system in the model, and it spit out what we need to do. The phase 2 model went further, and where we actually measured flows in the system. We had, we call it flow monitoring. We had 4 flow monitors. We measured, I want to say, March through May of last year. And then what they did with that is they calibrated the information from the first phase so that we were within a certain accuracy to predict if we applied this rainfall to our area with our growth, how will the pipes respond? So this is what I'm going to be telling you about tonight. So in the reports and in planning, we use certain terminology, and we just want to make sure everyone's on the same page. When we say committed flows, we mean that capacity is formally reserved through a water and sewer extension contract, or we've signed an Orange County building permit, or we have given a ability to serve letter or flow acceptance letter for someone to apply for a state permit, because not everything that joins our system requires an extension of our system. So we don't always have the water and sewer extension contract. Potential means an in-town parcel, it's properly zoned, or you guys have taken an action on a special use permit or a master plan. And it could even be an outdated plan, expired, because they didn't finish the construction within a certain amount of time, or whatever other conditions were in that plan. But we're calling that potential growth, and that's still out there. Preliminary inquiries means realtors have called us, or people wanting to buy a parcel. It could be in town, out of town, or even outside our urban service boundary. And they want to know about water and sewer availability, or they want to know, hey, can I buy, if I bought this, can I put this type of, can I build this type of project? So those are preliminary inquiries. So in the model, I presented a list of committed and potential development. I did this for phase 1, and that was based on our current knowledge and the water capacity model that the town has maintained for several years. In phase 2, I revised that slightly based on even more information. But again, these are just guesses for the most part on what we had in the model and what we expect to be in a parcel. So the model is showing that for 2040, our average day flow increase is just shy of 1 MGD, which is actually pretty good, because I said earlier that our plan is currently limited at 2.2 MGD for nutrients. So we are getting close to that. But there's options. What is important about the flow that was introduced in the model is that it does not include the potential flow from the influx of accessory dwelling units that people are starting to build, in-town redevelopment with higher density, and any of these preliminary inquiries or single-family residents that maybe used to have a mobile home park on them, and now that mobile home park's been moved, or not the park, but a home, and now they want to build like a 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom, 6-bedroom house on that. We're seeing that around town right now. So just to remind you of the phase 1 modeling conclusions, we had problems with our main interceptor in the river basin. And given the parameters that we set up for the model, and with the growth and rainfall we projected, we're experiencing surcharging in the manholes with rain events. Surcharging means that water is exceeding the capacity of the pipe, and it's getting up into the manholes. Our parameter for this results was if anything got within 2 feet of the top of a manhole, then it needed to be flagged as a problem. The phase one model said that we needed to look at Elizabeth Brady pumping station, possibly by 2025. Again, that was with the projected rate of growth, and it's so variable. We probably have that. That's probably a good target, but we can watch that as well. And in phase one, they estimated the cost without the river pumping station upgrade, which you heard about in March, that I'm not talking about in detail tonight, of $18 million. That's for the interceptors and basically everything in the river basin, our largest and oldest basin. The river pump station upgrade from a separate evaluation by a different consultant is $7 million. And again, the phase one did not include the actual flows that we measured in the system, but phase two did. So the modeling conclusions for that are that significantly more improvements are needed in order to achieve our level of service criteria, our parameters that we set through 2040. I&I is a big problem in the river basin. It makes sense. It's the oldest basin, the first to be built. A lot of the pumping stations were built by developers and given to the town. They might not have been to standards. They were only designed to serve that particular area at the time. And while our system has aged, we have also grown and redeveloped a little bit. Our Lawndale Basin is especially leaky. So we have a wet weather issue in the river basin, but we have just a growth issue in the Elizabeth Brady Basin. Elizabeth Brady Basin is a newer basin. You may remember we redid that pump station in 2012 and upgraded its capacity a little bit, but unfortunately it might need it again if the projections that we gave for the model come to fruition, and that is what the board wants, and that's how we want to develop. So increased flows without improvements, especially in the river basin, will increase the risk of sanitary sewer overflows for the town. Back when I was a regulator in early 2000 to 2006, I remember that Hillsborough had some repetitive sanitary sewer overflows when it rained. We have done a great job of managing that and reducing I&I with our own in-house forces and some spot rehabilitation, but we do not want to get back into that situation again. So the phase two model improvements, and I had mentioned in the earlier slide how leaky Lawndale is, and I just wanted to point out in this table that we had a flow monitor in our Lawndale Basin. It's a very small basin, about 77,000 linear feet of sewer, but you can see under average daily flow, we're getting about a little over 27,000, but when it rains, we have jumped up to 288,000 gallons a day of water, extraneous water, which gives us a peak factor of 10.6. That's huge. A normal peaking factors probably between 2 to 5 might be reasonable. And you can see our river basin flow monitoring showed that we have an 8.2 peaking factor. So we know for a fact that this is a leaky basin. And then again, we can see that Elizabeth Brady, where we also did some flow monitoring, only has a 4.7 peaking factor, definitely more manageable and reasonable for a newer basin. So in the map to your right, actually, I think I blew these up, so I'm going to move to the next slide. Nope, go back. River basin. So all the red is our main interceptors. I don't know. Can you see my cursor moving? Okay, so right here, this is Exchange Club Park. And then this is the main interceptor that was built with the wastewater treatment plant in the early 70s. And then we've also got this triangle here is the river pumping station. So my concern right now, although this looks like a lot, this red and this yellow, I'm really concerned about this area right here and getting this taken care of. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. In the Elizabeth Brady Basin, there is some red here. These are our interceptors. And up here, we've got the Elizabeth Brady pumping station. We have a few other pumping stations down by Waterstone that do discharge into this basin. But this in the 2040 planning horizon with committed and potential growth shows that we need to be watching this interceptor, and we probably need to increase the capacity of our Elizabeth Brady pumping station. And the bad news, the opinion of probable cost, which includes 25% contingency and also 15% for mobilization and other general conditions. We're looking at overall to satisfy us through 2040. If we just deal with the committed flows that we know about, we're looking at 36.7 million estimated. If we accommodate the committed and proposed, then we're looking at 42.7. Now, these do include the 7 million from the river pumping station upgrade report. So that's why there's significant jump from the phase 1 modeling, is that is now rolled into this. So the report prioritized what we should be doing. And the high priority improvements are the river pumping station, Exchange Park Lane gravity sewers, and the river interceptor from Exchange Club to the river pumping station. Estimate that to be 12 million. I don't have hard numbers on that yet because we're breaking it out of those overall numbers I just presented to you. The Lawndale Basin, to study that and to rehab it and use it as a pilot project to see how much flow we can remove by rehabilitation of the pipes, is estimated around 500,000. Now, we have already budgeted, you have already approved in the budget, river pumping station land acquisition and $200,000 for design. We are working on getting the scope for design. And right now I hear it is above that budget, but I'll be working to get that more down to what we are approved for. I do have some rehabilitation budget that I can go ahead and do the Lawndale study. But we have no funding for the pipe upsizing other than our typical I&I reduction that we might do in Lawndale or with in-house forces. Medium priority is Elizabeth Brady and the other areas of the river basin. And then the lower priority is the river basin pumping station and force main improvements after further evaluation, and then monitoring the Elizabeth Brady gravity sewer. So what's this all mean? It's try not to get too technical on you, but it means there really is no more capacity in the river basin due to inflow and infiltration. We can monitor Elizabeth Brady, but we'll need to plan some upgrades at some point. We don't have the full actual construction scope and fee. What I've given you is ballpark estimates based on what we know. Funding sources and rate impacts is not solidified. We are looking into several funding sources right now. We've got the ARPA funds coming out. I've been involved in some BRIC FEMA type funding. We're going to be talking to someone later this week about SRF funding and other available state and federal funding opportunities. To keep in mind too, we have other capital projects to address. I'm not dealing with the water side right now. Or any of the other capital projects, Adrian Thompson facility, to name some of them. And we have little time to plan, permit, design, and construct these improvements. But I will be looking at interim solutions to explore for the river basin. So to give you an example of some of the projects that we submitted for the modeling effort as committed, these are 2020 numbers. I just wanted to highlight, I'm not going to go through them all, but the highlighted areas are ones that do discharge to river basin. And some of them have come to fruition in the past year. The potential projects, the highlighted ones again, some of them have actually moved to committed since last year. We have some coming on board right now with the new jail. They just got their certificate of occupancy. So we do have potential projects that are wanting to develop in river. And again, remembering that we have not included redevelopment of high density uses in that basin. Daniel Boone Village is very critical, I believe, and we need to find a way to accommodate. This is the map of expected growth. And at this time, Margaret is going to jump in and start talking about growth and planning impacts. And I will advance slides for her.
And while I do that, I think Marie is also going to bring up the larger version of the map that you received in your packet, because we both realized that it's really hard to see this map at the 11 by 17 or even at the screen size in a screenshot. And so this just tries to combine two pieces of information together. So it shows you the same red boundary, that's water sewer area, the same green line that separates the two basins, but then it shows you in various colors all the projects that we have all been answering questions on. And when I mean we all, I mean myself, Shannon, Marie, other random people that people get a hold of. So you can see there's a lot of color on this map. The ones that are in the brighter colors, the bright blue and kind of the goldy orange, are the ones that are committed. Those are the ones that there's already some kind of project or approval for. So you've got the North Campus for Orange County, you've got Collins Ridge, you've got the hospital and Research Triangle Logistics Park on the south. Those projects have been approved and accommodated in the model. But then look at the lighter colored ones. All of the light blue and the more tan colored are the potential projects. Those are things that we've either talked about, heard about, anticipate some sort of development on. I mean, that's our train station, that's Daniel Boone. Both of those parcels flow to the river basin. We are kind of banking on both of those properties to generate a lot of activity, generate a lot of development, generate a lot of revenues for the town of Hillsborough. And then the gray ones are what I call the fishing expeditions. Those are the calls that seem to come in nearly every day. Board members who have been on the board for a while might recognize the locations of a couple of these as been things that maybe you've said thanks but no thanks to. But there are a lot of inquiries with how hot our residential market is, with how hot even the commercial market is starting to be. There are regular and often inquiries to both the planning department and utilities. And it's just habit for developers to call the planning department first and ask about utilities. It's not that they're trying to bypass Marie, it's that that's just what they do. That's what they do in other jurisdictions. They start with the planning department and then they start asking us about utilities, and we're like, whoa, wait a minute, you need to talk to somebody else. You need to talk to the folks who actually know. And that's why we're bringing this to you together, because if you want to go ahead and go back to the presentation, Marie, that would be great. And so first and foremost, we're getting inquiries every day, and the availability of utilities and capacity drives growth. Everybody wants to know, how much can I put on this piece of land? Do you have water capacity? Do you have sewer capacity? Those are the first questions that come out of everybody's mouth when they're looking to develop or redevelop land. Our future land use map, which guides growth for everything within that water and sewer boundary, we all look at, and the board is taught to look at as that's a decision-making guide. You are supposed to look at that and consider that when you get a development proposal. The public, however, particularly the development community, looks at that map as a promise and a commitment. They think everything in that map has utilities today, and that it's just, all they have to do is come and ask. And it's there, it's ready to go as much as they want for as long as they want. And so we're not gonna fix that. It's always gonna be a disconnect like that, but just so that you can understand why this thing that we look at as a guide has this other side to it and this other perception. You all know that we're also looking at a new comprehensive sustainability plan. We can just about guarantee that that plan is going to recommend redevelopment and approaches that we are not currently accommodating in our ordinance, and that probably cannot be accommodated with our system. The continuation of pursuing, smart growth, compact development, redevelopment in a walkable way doesn't really bode well for the river basin. That those lines probably need to be upsized if we're going to pursue that. And the town has been welcoming development ever since we've started the reservoir, because we understood that there was a lot more capacity coming in there. We lost a huge water user when the mills left, and we've been trying to backfill and spread the cost of this utility system out over more and more and more customers. Now that we've kind of shifted focus a little bit away from the water side and are starting to look at the wastewater side, we're understanding that there are some real constraints there that need to be addressed. And I'm glad we've done this study now and not, in 2 years from now when we're really in a problem. But, it's time to look at this with some, really clear thought and determine what it means for us. If you could advance the slide, Marie, please. So like I said, the comprehensive plan is underway. Redevelopment at the core is more sustainable in the long run, without a doubt. But it requires a constant investment in our infrastructure, not just water and sewer lines, but roads and everything else. If we're going to continue to focus additional development and additional density in the core, it stands to reason that those lines not only need to be well maintained and protected from leaks, but occasionally they're going to have to be upsized. And that is a big project with a lot of costs and can be very disruptive. The continued development of low density single family detached development is not sustainable. And we've done a really good job of not sprawling like we could have. Board members will remember many requests on our boundaries that we said no to. But I think it's safe to say that the plan is going to push us to go farther, to do less and less detached housing, smaller and smaller lots. And that's going to require us to look very closely at our infrastructure. And some of these choices will control the town's future. And the sooner we have those discussions and have some clear guidance, kind of the better it will be for everyone. You can go ahead and advance. So basically what Marie and I and Stephanie and Shannon are all asking is that we really need some direction on responding to all of these inquiries, and also for developing options to move forward, because it's not just answering the phone calls, but there is a lot of work recommended in this report. And there are a lot of stuff that needs to get done, a lot of money we need to find, and we need to do this all together. So traditionally, anytime somebody wants water and sewer service, we bring them in front of the board. that seems really kind of inefficient and ineffective now that we have these scientific studies that tell us where we're at and what the real state of our system is. Do we want to identify priority projects or priority areas of town? Staff says ideally yes, but it might be better for that to come as part of this comprehensive sustainability plan that we're going to be working on over the next 18 months. We wouldn't want to just kind of do that on the fly. There's a lot that goes into that, and we probably ought to be very cautious and circumspect and detailed in how we make that decision. Do we need to formally pause growth in the river basin until some of these improvements are made? While all the committed flow is not yet realized, we are at risk. Formal moratoria have consequences and a very specified process that has to be gone through. But as we approach our capacity for wastewater, the state has the ability to mandate that we either start planning or figure something out. So we have to watch both sides of that. And then development and redevelopment is ongoing in the river basin. You saw all those colored parcels on the map, and how much of that can we reasonably and accurately and safely accommodate? And go ahead and advance. And I think now it's us together. So yes, I'll turn it back to Marie because she had lots of additional questions that maybe this is all generated for you.
Well, yes. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, there's a lot to go through. It's a lot to absorb, and there are a lot of decisions to be made. So, these are just examples of questions that we need to dive into in the coming months. I'm not going to go over them, but not for tonight, but things to start and think about for when we regroup again and go through some of these things. We talked a lot about which would come first, the capacity upgrades and then the growth, or do we decide on growth and then make the capacity upgrades to accommodate that? It could go either way, but we will embark on those in the future, in the coming months. It'll probably be a monthly topic, perhaps. I don't know. We'll see what we learn about funding, and I'm gathering information about how other utilities are allocating capacity and how long they're allowing it to be reserved. The comprehensive plan will be moving forward. So as some of these answers come up, then we'll be scheduling some more time with you to discuss them. But tonight, as Margaret said, we need at least some guidance. We did not fund the river pumping station design yet. I think we were talking about, and Eric can correct if I'm wrong, maybe using the ARPA money. Sorry, not the design. We've got money for that, but the actual construction, do we put it towards that? Do we go a different way? So we need your guidance on these topics here. I'd like to move forward with the pilot program in Lawndale, because every gallon we can demonstrate that we have eliminated through the rehab in Lawndale system could theoretically be applied to other areas of the system. We'll have a good idea to know, hey, we lined X linear feet of sewers in Lawndale, and our post flow monitoring showed that we reduced that peak from 10.6 down to 4.5. That would be great. Then we can apply that same basis to make sure we get the most bang for our buck when we perform further rehabilitation efforts in the system. I guess the main thing that I would like is to know what to tell the developers that call and inquire if they have a project in the river basin. As I mentioned before, There's committed flow that's not even yet realized. And this study shows that with the parameters we've provided, the sewers are full during a significant rain event. It's unfortunate that we have capacity during dry weather conditions, but it's when we get those rains, that 4.5-inch rain I showed you from January and what it did to the flow at the plant, that could create some overflows in the system. So I would like to be able to indicate, and I'm sure planning would too, that when people call, whether it's a fishing expedition or gets more serious, that we can't accept new projects in the river basin right now. I would like to be able to say that. And I want to explore options for future capacity allocation and funding, which might include some type of cost sharing arrangement with developers that want to come into there. And then also, I would like you to confirm that the existing urban services boundary will not be expanded. We've had a few inquiries of people who would like the boundary expanded to accommodate their project. We have had someone up by the North Water tank inquiring a few years ago. And we've had some people down south on the east side of 86 asking if we can expand the boundary. I'd like to know that we don't have that. I can just flat out say, sorry, we're not entertaining that right now. Also, satellite annexations, those make it very hard to say no to more people. They tend to generate more questions that if we annex something that's non-contiguous to our boundary and they build infrastructure to get to our system, the people along that route are now going to be asking, and that's just more capacity that worries me right now. And I'm sure that Margaret wants you guys to be prepared to identify priority development areas and discuss all those future questions very soon, because they do tie into the planning documents and our capital improvement plan. So with that, I'll let you guys start discussing some of these things, and we are all available to answer any questions. And I can stop sharing my screen. And I see Kathleen, and you're muted right now.
Thank you. What I'm hearing is, at least on the water side, is it's still alive in the legislature. Not likely to happen this year, but very real in the relatively near future is smaller water systems like ours being pushed into regional systems, which is a concern. Certainly. So, that impacts reserve, it impacts so many things. So that first question is what are you hearing in that, on that vein? The other piece is on that cost share. Given, what's happened with the impact fees, what options do we have without being hit with the developers, and given, the legislation that's already been passed with the developers? So those are two initial questions.
Okay, I'll take a stab at that. Regionalization. Yes, the funding agencies are giving more points to study it. The legislature is doing things with that, talking about regionalization for water resources needs. I don't see that being forced upon us, at least anytime soon, if at all. We just built our reservoir. We have lots of interconnections with other utilities. We actually have an allocation in Jordan Lake that's a completely separate river basin. And we could someday be able to utilize our allocation. To me, that is some type of pseudo regionalization. We did analyze a merger with Durham, I believe in the mid 2000s, and that did not prove cost effective. So, I mean, I can't speak to what the legislature will do, but forcing regionalization will be met with a lot of pushback from a lot of utilities. And in some cases, it's just simply not feasible. To your second question about the impact fees, I'm assuming you mean system development fees, which we used to call capacity fees. Is that what you're speaking of?
I'm speaking in a broader term of any fee that we're asking developers to contribute as part of cost sharing.
So it's really going to be developer driven from what I understand. Talked with Bob a little bit about it because I was attempting to maybe put some of that in our water and sewer extension agreement. And I believe what we discussed is if a developer wants to come and they offer for a cost share to contribute something to us to help us with this problem, and they agree to it in the extension contract, then that is fine. We will continue to evaluate our system development fees through a third-party consultant on a regular basis in accordance with the law. And those fees are supported by that report and that evaluation. And we will continue with that. We can't make it more than what the evaluation says. We also do have something in our ordinance, I believe, that says if we only need to upsize a pipe to a certain diameter, but someone else comes in and we need to make it even bigger, we can enter into a cost share agreement with that developer, and the town would pay its part, and then the developer would pay the extra increase, and then they would also, be involved in constructing it. So that, to me, that is not a bad way to, get some of our projects done, depending on how badly developers want to get into that. If we can figure out what we need today without anybody else coming on board, and then try to figure out, well, we already sort of know with this report what we need through 2040. If everyone comes on board and figure out, some prorated share. I briefly looked at Durham's code, and I noticed that they designate certain sewer basins as having an extra fee attached with them due to capacity limitations. And I want to look into that more. I can't speak to it completely tonight, but I thought that was very interesting. And I do want to ask them about what they're doing with that. So I think there's ways that we can get some assistance. I don't think our base should pay for it, but I think there can be some creativity, but it's going to take a little research and a lot of discussion with a lot of different parties, legal and planning and developers, of course. Did that address your questions?
Partially. I'm actually hearing that yes, even though there's going to be pushback on that regionalization, because we are in such good shape, that we're at a higher risk than I'd be comfortable with. It's just as
you froze a little bit. We may have lost Kathleen. Does she look frozen to everyone else?
She does.
Maybe I can switch to Mark for a moment and see if she came back. Are you back?
I think I don't know where I went, but anyhow,
you were worried about the last we heard is you were worried that we were at higher risk.
Yes, we're at higher risk. And then when I look at the cap expenses that we're facing, that actually increases our risk, because even with, if we go into bonds and I think of the other capital expenses in what we need to do on the water side, on general infrastructure in the coming years, whether it's one or multiple bonds, that is a pretty big number. It's going to have a pretty big tax impact. And so I have some real concerns. So I guess I'd like to hear, and this may be too early, but how are we looking at that, from an overall financial? Because what I see is, if we float the bonds, we're going to have to do a pretty hefty increase in tax to cover that. And then I think of other, as infrastructure, it is a continual process. So I really do have concerns of our overall risk and viability as a small system and over time.
Is there something I can come back to you with?
I guess I just want to put that out there, and I don't know if you or Eric. I mean, Eric, you're our financial whiz, and I know that this is not a solution for tonight, but I didn't know if you had any off the top of your head preliminary thoughts, at least on that finance and financial health, given these humongous CapEx expenses we're looking at.
Well, most importantly, please do not consider me a financial whiz. So this is a tough one. I mean, it's a staggering amount of money. And and one clarification, the word raising taxes was mentioned a few times. This is an enterprise fund, so there's no tax.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Duh. Right. Ding, ding, ding. That makes it even scarier for me, actually.
Yes, it's all water and sewer rates.
Yep.
However, we can, leverage funds. And we do have some money from system development fees, some reserves, other things we've been holding on till we get out of the reservoir. So we've got a little bit of flexibility, and we've got $2 million of ARPA funds, but that's a drop in the bucket compared to $42 million. And if you recall, during the budget process, I mean, I think I said, this is not a quick answer. This is going to probably be an all of FY21 just to get started. I mean, Marie has indicated about $12.5 million roughly to get started. I don't want to get in the weeds yet. The next thing that Marie and the budget team will do is figure out, it's just like, give us what are the priority projects. How does that compare with what we approved in the budget? And if you remember in the budget message, I said, this is just a placeholder because there are so many question marks. We just couldn't say with confidence in June, this is it, we're solid, we're going with this, we're going to have to make some adjustments. By coincidence, Tiffany and I think some of the budget team and I are meeting tomorrow morning with Davenport, the financial advisors we used on the revenue bonds for the reservoir. We worked with them on other projects. So we're talking about some possible refinancing and other things, but I've been in touch with them, and it's just, there's a whole lot of questions to answer, the questions that Margaret and Marie have posed. And once again, I go back to, I know you hear me talk about this. It's like every single day I walk into this office trying to get things done that are high priority, and every single day things drag me away. This was an issue that I wanted to make progress on months ago. ARP funds, how we're going to spend them. I've been working for 3 months on this. I can't get to it. I was in this weekend working on it, and it's just like we're short-staffed. We've lost key staff that have expertise in these areas. So anyway, it's we're talking about, probably 9 months this will be part of the upcoming budget process, but we'll move as quick as we can in projects like Lawndale. If we can get rolling fast on that with study, we need to spend these ARP funds relatively quickly. And that's something I'm hoping to get to the board relatively shortly to get some guidance from you on that. So anyway, that's really about all I can add, other than we're going to get to these things as fast as we can. And it's a lot to swallow at one time.
I will say that I support, part of our budgeting mandate is, protect and preserve, what we have. And to me, the existing river basin, as we improve, adding more development, not a good idea. I understand that there are tasks that we would have to go for a moratorium, but to me, it makes sense if we can do those steps. But I support, what has been put forward in terms of the support being asked. And I'm done, at least for now.
All right, Commissioner Bell.
So thanks for the presentation. And I think we all know that we've been saying for some time that the limiting factor of our growth is going to be not the water supply, but the wastewater processing. I appreciate the consultant's report and the summary that you and Margaret have put together in the presentation tonight. I know you're asking for some specific guidance here, and I don't know how you want to handle that process, but I want to make some kind of general comments and be happy to chime in on those things which are on page 70 of the agenda. So I'm curious to know, when you talk to developers, what do you anticipate is going to be how is this message going to be received by the usual kinds of developers and projects that you hear from almost on a daily basis about our extremely limited capacity and it having reached to the point where we have to start saying no to development projects of any significance? What kinds of comments and suggestions and opinion are they going to offer the town when they hear this change in policy?
Well, I'll say my experience is, and then Margaret can chime in because she probably talks to them more than I do. They say, what do we need to do to get our project done? That's for a larger development. For a smaller development, I would say, they're mostly looking to see if they purchased a lot, can they subdivide it and put 4 homes on it? I do say that we're a little limited right now and we're going to be working through these issues. The last thing I want to do is have anyone invest a bunch of money and then turn around and tell them we can't accommodate them. So that is sort of what we're asking for guidance on tonight. I want to be able to have a message, and a message that is consistent with planning, that this is our message. I don't know if it needs to be formal or not, but that is what is stressing me out, is like, I don't want to tell anyone no, but I also don't want to have the town be in the news for sanitary sewer overflows if it rains hard. But my overall experience is for larger developers is like, okay, well, what do we need to do? Because they want that flow. And Shannon is going to jump in and give her perspective, I see.
Well, I was just going to echo that. When we've indicated that we're studying this issue and that we may have a flow capacity issue, the first thing that I've heard is, well, what do we need to pay? Or how can we cost share? Which is actually interesting because developers usually complain a lot about excessive fees. but I think they're recognizing that the infrastructure is necessary. The other thing that we're hearing, and there is a question about the water sewer boundary and satellite annexations, is when we kind of say to them, well, you know, this isn't in our primary service area, or this isn't a contiguous annexation. The other thing we're hearing is, well, we want to go to the town board and ask. And I'm uncomfortable, and I think Marie is kind of uncomfortable bringing something to the town board and saying, hey, we don't think this is a great idea, but the developer wants us to come ask you. And so that's kind of, we're in this tricky place now. And so I want to explain those bullet points a little bit. That's where those are coming from. We get people who are saying, well, we want to expand this. We want to build this project. Let's take it to the town board. Don't they want development XYZ, you know, and they list off something that they think the town board would want to have.
Right. Yeah, they'll throw in something that will get traction to kind of sweeten the pot. Well, to me, it seems like the satellite annexation is the first one to say, you know, that's the lowest hanging fruit. I would be in favor of pausing, you know, any discussion on that. And I don't know if you need to make a policy and have the board bless this policy that says for the foreseeable future or until further notice, no satellite development, no changing of the urban service boundary. That's the second thing. And then on, you know, as we get closer to the river basin, those development projects, you know, anything over, I could see a policy where, you know, anything that required over X amount of gallons per day or per year, however you measure it. That's how you would kind of be able to tell the potential developer, yes, that's plausible, or no, that exceeds the kind of the limit. And I don't know what, it seems like you might need a formula to help guide those kinds of discussions, because an infill project like an accessory dwelling is one thing, but then there's a blank lot that could accommodate, you know, 12 units. That's a completely different kind of project. So, but I you know, obviously am for limiting these things and giving you the power to have the conversation with the developer so it doesn't need to or shouldn't come to us unless it meets, you know, the certain criteria. And I know that it might take you a while to come up with all those things, those criteria to put into a policy. So, but I encourage you to, you know, you have my support to be thinking in that way. And I'm curious to see what my fellow commissioners have to say.
Mayor Jen?
Thank you. Thanks, Marie. I have some general comments before I say those. I like Mark's idea about having some criteria about the river basin. But I would like to hear, you know, from staff about whether that seems like what, you know, how laborious is that? Is the bang worth the buck? You know, is there an easier way to do that? So that's just sort of a general, I like the idea, interested in staff response to that. Fully agree that these things that you are recommending for tonight, they seem reasonable and necessary. The things that are on this list. I would be very hesitant about a formal moratoria unless you all, unless it was clearly articulated to the town board that was the step that needed to be taken, because it does sound like that's a pretty profound kind of signal to be sending out to the world and to our community. So I would be hesitant about a formal moratorium unless you're saying, I'm not hearing that that's what you think we absolutely need to do. So let us know if it is. I think that in the river basin, I really want to keep in mind how important the comprehensive planning process is. And that in thinking about how it's not just a comprehensive plan, it's a comprehensive sustainability plan, and just huge implications, hopefully in a good way. I mean, I'm very excited about this, but that plan will have for the future of Hillsborough and what our town looks and feels like going into the future, a future where many things are not known, that it seems really important to have a good handle on the comprehensive sustainability plan before we start picking and choosing projects in the river basin, because that's just one of the areas where walkability, and not, absolutely not just in the historic district, but there's, many, many places where we can, that those smart growth ideas have potential. And I want to be careful about how we don't want to find that we are unable to implement the vision that we have for our community. We want to be able to be choosy. And that's all I have for the moment.
Thank you. Commissioner Hughes?
Thanks, Marie. And if you see me looking off, I've got multiple screens, so I'm looking off at notes and such. I think that, thank you for the presentation. I think it was very informative, and having your commentary to go with it really helped in better understanding what all I was reading over the weekend. I would say that, some of the things that you mentioned, like looking at a pilot program in Lawndale to see if there is way to free capacity, I'd be in support of that. Also, investigating with, developers, and that could be big developer, small developer, one person, or a family that's building something, to look into potential cost sharing. I agree with Commissioner Bell on putting a pause on satellite annexations. I wouldn't say all annexations. If someone would want to, annex something that's contiguous to the town boundaries, I think that makes a lot of sense. I did want to just make sure that was captured, but then also, not just confirming that we are not currently looking at expanding our service boundary, but we're also not looking to reduce the service boundary at the same time. That it's status quo as it currently stands. And I think that's important as well. I know that wasn't a question for a path forward, but I think, if we're going to pause things, then I think it's pausing altogether. My fear, though I agree with Mayor Weaver about a moratoria, is, yes, if y'all really, 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 really think it needs to happen, then I can get around to that. But I think aside from that, to me, that's kind of like a nuclear option, just because of Orange County's reputation about development, and specifically economic development, that if we have a really good project or something that comes our way that we want to support, but we've put ourselves in a box, that I would be very worried about that, just because those opportunities don't seem to come to Orange County that frequently. And if they are going to come, like RTLP, they're probably going to be somewhere either in Hillsborough or immediately adjacent to it. So those were just my general comments and thoughts.
Awesome. Commissioner English?
Thank you, Maria, again for the presentation stuff. And as the other commissioners had already commented on, it was very well done, and helps put some voice kind of behind it instead of just reading numbers. And I'm glancing over to another screen too, so if I'm not looking directly at the camera, that's what I'm doing. I'm in agreement with pretty much what Commissioners Bell and Hughes just kind of reiterated, and Mayor Weaver too, and Commissioner Ferguson. To me, it's kind of what's been at the core for many years here is taking care of what we have. And so I think it needs to, really start to look at what we have and what we immediately need to do to maintain what we have. The Lawndale PS project or pilot program seems like a good thing to do. It's it has obviously a decent price tag to it, but it seems like if we can learn from that, and it's something that we need kind of immediately or last year or a long time ago, then we should do it. So that's something I would certainly support. And I don't have a problem with confirming existing, urban service boundary, and not expanding on that. I can certainly, I think, get behind that too, because I think we have to have we have to kind of draw a line in the sand and say we're not, committed to building anything kind of beyond this or supporting any services kind of beyond this. What else do I have in my notes? So much of it is again dependent upon us completing the comprehensive sustainability plan, that I think it's so hard to predict that without kind of that guiding document. And so I think the sooner obviously we can get that done, we'll certainly, I think, answer some of the more critical sort of questions for the future. And then, I think anywhere we can try to leverage or figure out ways that we can cost share with developers, whether it's, big, medium, small, is super important for us to, continue to grow and develop. So I don't know what, I don't know what that looks like and how that works in other municipalities that potentially have had success with that. But I think people, at least developers, are really showing an interest in wanting to continue to develop areas and parts of Hillsborough. And I think if we can, find a way to support that and it works for both us and the developer, obviously that's a win-win. And then, yeah, obviously some formula or way, criteria, again, for that cost sharing thing, I think is so important. But my thing is really, obviously looking at taking care of what we have, without getting too far out in the future. So I'll leave it at that for now. And I apologize, I'm rambling because my head just went. But
All of ours, I assure you.
but thank you for now. That's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Hughes?
Yeah, I have a question. This is actually for Bob, based on what Kathleen mentioned about the bill going through the legislature. I don't know how familiar you are with it, Bob, but I seem to have a recollection that anytime that the legislature has been forcing cities and municipalities, some of whom are much bigger than us, into a regionalized system, that their hands continue to get smacked. And I know the most prominent example has been when they forced Asheville to take their water system and make it into a regional system. And I believe the Supreme Court unanimously ruled against the legislature. But I was wondering if you had any weigh in on that, just since it did come up during our discussion.
Well, I mean, I don't have any particular insight on it other than, regionalization will require legislation for it to happen. And, it has, in the Asheville situation, it certainly proved tricky, and it was litigated for many, many, many years. So I really can't tell you, as I sit here this evening, what lesson we can learn from that, though I'm sure there are many lessons we can learn from that if we need to.
Great, thank you. And I misspoke. I said it was unanimous, but one justice did dissent in that decision, and that's the current Chief Justice. So, but par for the course.
Right.
Eric?
When we looked at Durham, the partnership with them, with them basically taking over our system, I mean, it was like over $100 million of cost just on sewer. I'm sure construction costs are way higher now. So if somebody was going to force regionalization on us, I mean, the only people, there's Durham, there's Owasso, and there's Mebane. I mean, Owasso is in a completely different drainage basin. It would not be a simple, you know, they would have to target us, and there'd have to be a lot of studies. I mean, I don't have as, I mean, the General Assembly wouldn't be surprised at anything they might do based on recent years, but this would be a really tough nut to crack. As an engineer who worked on our system said, we're sort of on an island and isolated, and no one's close to us. So because of those reasons, my immediate fear on those is relatively low. But take that for whatever it's worth, which is probably not much.
Bob?
I do want to point out, I was just taking a look at chapter 160D, and in the section about development agreements, just so we all know, there are provisions that would allow local governments and developers to agree to share some of the costs of extending infrastructure. So that's among the tools that may be in the toolkit as we have discussions with developers and with the public generally.
Definitely writing that one down. Commissioner English?
I didn't mention it before, but I did want to mention that I would like to obviously discuss more and start those discussions about priority development areas. I'm sure the planning people have some ideas in mind of where those areas may be, and so I don't know if that's a discussion for tonight or not, but it's something I would certainly want to hear more about from our planning people.
I think Shannon's going to mention something now.
I was just going to kind of add in, we do have some of the base data from the work that Stephanie and I have done. I'll give mostly Stephanie, since she's the project lead, on the comprehensive sustainability plan and kind of where we're headed. We've got the community visioning survey data. We've also got our existing land use plan. We have our existing water and sewer boundaries. So we can kind of use a little bit of that to look and see where we're headed as far as development goes. And to Commissioner Hughes's point, nobody wants to tell projects no, or we don't have capacity any less than me. I mean, that's what I've spent the last 5 years doing, economic development and telling everyone how great it is and how they need to come here. And obviously, you know, I want to point out that two very big projects are in that river basin. It's not just infill. It's, you know, we do have that Daniel Boone Village redevelopment project and the train station. And those are huge, going to be huge for us at some point. So I know Marie needs a lot of money and information, and anywhere that she can find us capacity, you know, we're grateful to her, and we're grateful for this study.
I don't want to say no either, but Commissioner Lloyd, did you want to say anything?
I tried, but nobody recognized me.
Sorry, I was looking at the little hand thing going up, but I know you don't necessarily have that.
Well, I tried, but.
My apologies.
Anyway, this is a very good report, but the thing that bothers me, I go back with Longdale a long way. And there were times when they had a pump station there that there was a daycare center that flushed diapers down the drain. And eventually we went from pump station to gravity flow, and it was a 3-2 vote. And I was, it was Francis Nancy Brown Lowen, and I voted for it, and the other two voted against it. And we had it was a big uproar. Did any of these, this goes back to the, what I'm trying to say is you've got where the infiltration comes and the water comes, is this from old pipes?
Yes, I believe it's from old pipes. That the pipes in that area are vitrified clay. Vitrified clay comes in short segments, so there's lots of joints. And when you think of vitrified clay, think of a terracotta pot. You know how easily they crack, and they're porous, so water can get in that way through joints, through cracks. Also, I did see some old plans for that area, and it appears that we built the sewer and we just intercepted older septic tanks. And I don't know if those septic tanks were abandoned or what kind of connection might be made to them. Over the years, too, people tend to connect rain gutters and sump pumps and other things to the system without us knowing. If they have a depression in their yard and it's holding water, instead of grading that out, they'll just like build a pipe with a drain and hammer it into our system. And those are the things that the evaluation will find.
Hey, there was thing, when I was on the health board, there was no sewer lines. And we got through Orange County, after they got finished with, Orange County got a grant for, am I still here? But we got a grant and got effluent estates done the best we could. Then we went to Bellevue, yeah, we did some work in Bellevue, and then we went to Fairview. Can you see me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't see you.
Oh,
Got a welcome to office on the web, but that's okay. Well, the thing was, each house had who didn't. Well, in fact, nobody had indoor plumbing, and the soil was clay. So the clay vein ran from effluent estates all through northern Fairview. The sewage ran down the ditches, and to go to northern Fairview, it was not in town. It had not been annexed. It was fairly miserable, and you can imagine how it was for those living there. So each person who wanted an indoor toilet was allowed $500, and that was to put in a bathroom. So it's been a while. That was before we annexed them, and we annexed them probably in, what year did we annex them? 1989, somewhere in there. So I mean, you think about that, you've got raw sewage going down lines, and it takes until, I mean, if we get the CD grant, and then you start getting the lines put in. So they had to be half decent lines, but I don't know about the lines. If they pay for the bathroom and the fixture, $500. Look how far it goes, and this was 4 of us on the board, so it must be in the 1980s. So what kind of lines did they have then? So I wonder if anything has been done since then towards, Longdale and that area. Because then after they got through with that, they paved the roads, and paved the roads, and I don't believe they put any roofs on. So I mean, but they were running out of money. So does that have anything? Has anything been done since Hillsborough annexed it? I don't know.
in the way of rehabilitation, I'm not quite sure.
I mean, the sewer lines.
We have not replaced any sewer lines. We've performed some point repairs, and a few years ago, after I had started, the collection system team brought instance of a broken private side sewer service to my attention, and we were able to use our ordinance to send them a letter and to require them to fix that, and that actually helped a good amount. So that's another thing we have to look at when we study the system. Where do the problems lie? Are they on the private side or on the public? And if they are on the private, how much of the private are we going to address? Studies show that 50% of I&I can come from the private side sewer services, and a lot of utilities are simply just taking that on for the benefit of the system and the utility as a whole, and doing some extra lining up into those pipes.
But if you think about it, since it had to be the 80s that they finally got a sewer line. They had not had a sewer line. So you had raw sewage running down the ditches, which I don't know how far, I can't remember how far you got a $500 grant per house. And the town didn't annex it until everything was finished. And at that time, when it was annexed, everything was supposed to be finished. But you have to realize that was grant money, so those pipes are probably pretty old. And I should be able to remember it because I can remember the smell of it. And you think about it. So all of that, it has got to play a part. And I may be wrong, but I mean, who knows? Longdale has always had problems with that pump station.
That's some really good history.
Because Frances Dancy used to talk about it all the time, and she lived right there.
Mm.
So I mean, I've given you all the background I have. I think it's a wonderful study, and I have read through it several times. But it's to me. So you're going to start at Longdale, and you're going to go down to the river basin, and then to Elizabeth Brady.
That's the priority. Well, for I&I reduction, which Lawndale goes into the river basin, we're going to do a pilot program. We're going to study Lawndale pipes, see where the problems are, attempt to fix them, measure the flow again, and say, how successful were we? If we eliminated, when it rains, 100,000 gallons of flow, I would call that pretty successful, given that we see 200,000 gallons of flow on a rainy day right now, just in that small 7,000 linear feet of gravity pipe. But we also simultaneously need to be working on the river basin interceptors in the areas that I identified between Exchange Club and the wastewater plant.
Yeah, I understand that. But I'm just trying to give you some background, because the pipes, if the pipes have been there, whatever was there was put there when the county had the grant, then they're awfully old.
They are awfully old, and that is great history and informative. So I've taken some notes on that. And I think I just saw some, I've been reading a lot of the Old Town Code from the 70s to the mid 80s on other matters. And I think I did see that discussion when that area was annexed.
Well, I think it was
Thank you so much.
probably in the 80s, because we did all those other projects before we got to that one. That was the last one. And I should know, because I stopped a woman from killing Mayor Cates. She was going to kill Mayor Cates because she thought we had plenty of money and we could fix Northern Fairview, whether they were in town or not. And I stopped her just at a Christmas tree from hitting him. And she liked to beat me to death, so I will never forget that. So you think you have it hard now, you have her beat you to death, and she just about did.
Oh my. Well, thank you so much. Between Commissioner Hughes and Stephanie, you've probably heard the whole presentation. Commissioner, do you mind if I let Stephanie go? She has some insights.
Yeah, I was going back a couple of comments to the comprehensive sustainability plan. It will provide some guidance, but we also know a little bit about what it's likely to say based on smart growth principles and just sustainability, land use planning in general. Hillsborough is in a pretty unique situation, unlike a lot of towns, in that our walkable downtown center is also quite hard to, from a transportation standpoint, build up too much, right? Because it's north of the river and we have only a few crossings. So as you know, for many years, the planning department has focused a lot of energy and effort in creating opportunity for development south of the river. Still close to downtown, not quite walkable yet, but something that we'll be talking about next month is how to make those connections and how to prioritize those connections in terms of walkability. So as Shannon said, the Daniel Boone parcel and the train station parcel are obviously very important for that whole model that we've been working on of smart growth for many years. And the sustainability plan will recognize the work that we've done, and it will probably give us some guidance on how to continue it. I think it's important to note that redevelopment along South Churton beyond Daniel Boone and the train station properties is likely, in the decades to come. Some of those smaller parcels along South Churton Street and Orange Grove Road and Mayo, those streets that are still in that south part of town. And those just by nature fall into the river basin, right? And additionally, the comprehensive sustainability plan will probably also look at ways to encourage additional density in a compatible way north of the river, density that can be absorbed by the sort of historic single family home nature of our town, respecting that small town character, respecting that character, but perhaps adding units in a compatible way. So that infill development, which up to this point hasn't really been considered in the model, but y'all are going to need to find a way to reserve capacity for infill in existing neighborhoods north of the river that are walkable, and those also primarily feed into the river. Just by the way, it works out, they feed into the river basin. So I guess I just wanted to say that the comprehensive plan will build, I think, a lot on these ideas and give us some real tools for being able to look at that. But I think you can also, as you probably all already know, that those developable parcels or those high priority areas continue the pattern of development that has been in place now for a while in Hillsborough, and pushes it further, but in a way that can be absorbed and is compatible, in our small town. So I just wanted to add that. And over the next couple months, we'll be talking about transportation, and we'll also be coming back and talking about updating the future land use map. And all of these conversations go together, right? We have to consider everything at once. It's hard to fit into a workshop, but we'll, just as Marie said, we'll be coming back numerous times. And it's just important to keep each of these layers in mind as we start to look for where our greatest opportunities and the best fits are for encouraging development in the future.
Thanks, Stephanie. Commissioner Hughes.
Thanks, Marie. I have two questions, one of which is because I'm kind of curious about these connections that you say you find as part that go into the sewer system where people just hook up their sump pumps and all that. So how do y'all typically find that? And then what are ways, if we're also kind of absorbing the cost for that, and I don't know if there are legal ways to do that, and we're still absorbing the cost, but regardless, is there a way to recoup some of those dollars, whether that's through an enforcement mechanism if one exists, or is there a permitting system when folks want to connect to the sewer system legally? How does all that work?
So finding what we call illicit connections is really through what we call smoke testing. And I'm sure you've seen the articles and the press releases when we have done smoke testing, and we do door hangers. So we actually pump, it's called smoke, but it's really colored, vaporized water into the system, and we observe. So normally, if your plumbing is correct, you're going to see smoke coming out of your roof vent, your main stack. But if you see it coming out of a crack in the ground, or a storm sewer catch basin, or someone starts calling that their laundry room or their basement area, their daylight basement, is getting filled with smoke, or it comes out in the middle of their yard and that's not where their sewer service is, that is how we find those connections. Or come out of their gutter, at the top of their gutter. That means they've got their yard drain connected. That means there's a break in the pipe somewhere, a possible cross connection with a storm sewer, which happens more often than not, where there's either a purposeful or inadvertent connection of storm sewers to sanitary sewers. We call those combined sewers, but the only combined sewer in the state was Lumberton. Everybody else just has haphazard connections. Sometimes when you build water and sewer, if you don't have an adequate separation distance and you put a big heavy storm culvert over a sewer pipe, eventually that's going to settle and break that sewer pipe and the culvert, and the water's just going to pour in that way. So we find them through what we call smoke testing. And we also, then once we find the smoke, then we can also do what's called dye testing, is where we actually gain access to the premises, and we will drop colored, like food coloring, down a toilet and flush it. And then we have people out in the system observing to see, what's connected. If it were a sump pump, we would put it in the sump pump, and then we would make the sump pump run, and we'd observe at the next downstream manhole. And if we saw that colored water, we know that's connected. Our ordinance does have customer responsibilities, and it delineates where those are at, and it does allow us to write letters. We do a progressive enforcement. We've never actually had to find someone, at least not during my time here, but we have been successful in education and meeting with that owner. We had a small business in the Lawndale Basin where Al Robertson, who's over our pump station, said, "I don't understand why this Lawndale station is running so much. When it rains, we want to investigate." And they dropped a camera in the lines. And like I showed you at the end of March, that leaking lateral, that's another way that we find things like that. And we had that leaking lateral, and then they smoke tested it, and they saw it coming out of the ground in 3 different spots. So we made a map of that, and we circled where it was, and we approached the owner of the property and said, this needs to be fixed. It's contributing extra flow. We'll work with you on this, but if you fail to do anything, then we're going to take the next step. And that would be some type of enforcement action. And we have the authority up to and including cutting people's water off, which we absolutely don't ever want to get to that point. But we do have that authority. Did that answer your question?
Yep, sure did. Thank you.
You should ride along with us on our sewer camera one day.
Yeah, but this isn't the first time that they've had the a smoke pipe. They did it before. I mean, yes, back.
Yes.
But I think they did it in town. I don't know that they went to Fairview. I I don't mean you, I mean before you. I think they did it around my house. I can't
Mhm.
remember, and those lines should be a lot, well, they should be in better shape, you think, but maybe not. I would think they would be.
You have to take a methodical approach to finding and eliminating inflow and infiltration because it simply migrates. I did find some documentation that you may be speaking of, Commissioner Lloyd, from the mid 2000s, where we actually hired another firm to do sewer evaluation in different parts of town, and they made a map, and I think all those defects were corrected, but at the same time, you've still got other infrastructure that's continuing to age.
Yeah, I
And
realize
so it's
that. But I
endless.
was just giving an example of, I can remember it near my house, so
Yeah,
that means the other part of town wasn't. It's what, I'm not disputing you.
yeah, I understand. Mayor? You're muted. Happens every meeting.
Every meeting.
one of us, for one of us.
I just wanted to do a mid-discussion check-in and see if you and Margaret and Shannon and Stephanie, if you all feel like you're getting the feedback from the board that you need so far. It sounds to me like board members are pretty on board with the path forward that's been recommended. But I just wanted to jump in and see if y'all were getting what you needed, if we are missing big pieces that you need to hear from us on.
Well, I'm wondering if a motion would help supporting these recommended paths forward. And I don't know if Bob needs to weigh in on that. I guess I'm not real clear on the next step. If we can just craft a message to say, sorry, we don't have capacity without going into anything more formal. If that would be enough, which means I suppose if someone doesn't want to listen to our message, the last case could still be to come to the board, but I'm not sure really on that third bullet of authorized utilities and planning to indicate there's no current sewer capacity in River Basin.
I'm okay putting forth a motion if it's needed to support the recommendations you put forward.
I think to the extent that it will focus our attention, it would be a good idea.
No, so can I make the motion to adopt? Do you want adopt or approve? What language do you need? The recommendations.
I would say let's hear a rough draft of your motion, then we can figure out what the right word to use is, whether
Okay.
adopt, approve, or
So I would like to put forth the motion to approve the recommendations put forth by staff. Page, I think it's page 70, if I remember correctly.
yeah, it was.
Okay, if that's your motion for this report, I'll second it. I think I understand what you mean.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion or questions, clarifications needed? Mark?
Yeah, clarification. It seems like it would be never ending until we undo through some other board action. So do we need to put in some type of limiting factor that will review this in 3 months or 6 months, or quarterly status report, and this is the case until we say otherwise?
Yeah, I suggest that we set some point in the relatively near future as a check-in point until, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, whatever, maybe Marie and Stephanie and Shannon and Margaret have a comfort level with some period of time.
Originally, in my mind, I was thinking 6 months, just because it'll take time to actually get some, I think the evaluation of the Lawndale Basin would give us some idea. We're not going to be able to certainly affect the recommended repairs in 6 months, but at least we'll know what we're dealing with, and we'll also have a better handle on the way the comprehensive plan is going, and we'll have more on the transportation that Stephanie mentioned. So to me, and planning can chip in, 6 months would be comfortable for me. And if planning wants to jump in and say what they think, that would be great. Stephanie's nodding and saying,
Yeah, I think at the least we need 6 months. But I also think that as people inquire, mostly to Shannon, that we can let them know that in the future, we are still very interested in smart growth and development. You know, we don't have to turn people away willy-nilly. It's more of an indication to people that we're getting all of our planning documents updated. We're getting ready for the next stage of growth to make sure that it fits in with all of the needs and opportunities of the town. And I don't think 6 months is too long to ask people to wait while we get our ducks in a row.
No, I would agree with that. And also, yeah, it's not take a hike. It's let us prepare space for you at the table. We'd love to have you. And I also think that what we had discussed with Marie, especially with studying Lawndale, is looking at if there's a possibility to free up some capacity for some of that infill, some of those ADUs and those 1 and 2 lot residences, if we can find some space for that. So I think 6 months is probably appropriate.
So I will amend the motion to approve the recommendations as put forth and to revisit in 6 months.
A second.
Let's see, Commissioner
Okay,
Hughes.
the motion has been amended. Yeah. Yeah, Matt, go ahead. And then Rob.
Yeah, I was going to just say, I think 6 months makes it really clear. I think that gets us through some of our more traditional rainy times of the year as well, with ice and snow and just rain in general. Before Commissioner Ferguson said 6 months, I was going to specifically ask that, y'all come back with a report at our March work session. That would be 6 months, and then give you some time to kind of analyze what you need and what y'all have collected and bring back to us. So that was just going to be an additional suggestion, is that, we go ahead and commit, some time in March at our work session to discuss further.
Thank you, Matt. Rob?
I just wanted to chime in and advocate for basically what Stephanie said. And I think our message really needs to be, obviously, whatever we want it to be, but we're not, anti-development. It's more smart growth and connections, and it's part of the climate crisis that we're in. So it's not going to start raining any less than any time in the near future. And so I think that needs to be part of our message. But thank you, staff. Good job.
And then I have another clarifying question, just to be really clear on what this does mean. Does this mean a pause on everything, including, single family lots? What does it mean? Or is that what the motion is and what staff was asking for?
We still have committed that needs to be realized. Certainly, we're not going to hold that back. I'm not as concerned as a redevelopment of a single family lot, because at some point, we were recognizing that flow, and to add it again, I think our average flow that we use for the model is 240 gallons a day, which is not a lot. It's just the larger developments that are getting up there that are concerning, where that can really raise the level of the average pipe flow.
Thank you. That's helpful, Marie and Eric.
Just want to ask a question. Sometimes in the past, when we try to cobble together a motion on the fly, it creates problems. So I'm just going to ask a question. If the planning staff and Marie feel like they've got a pretty good feel for what the board wants, would it make sense for the staff to draft what you're getting at tonight, so then you can see it in writing at the September 13th meeting, and everybody has a little bit of time to reflect when you see the draft in the agenda to make edits and clarify, so we don't accidentally make a misstep tonight.
Totally support.
Thank you, Eric. Does that mean you are withdrawing, Kathleen?
Well, it's pending staff comment. So if staff wishes to do as Eric suggests, I will withdraw. If staff feels the present motion supports what they want, I am fine with that. Ultimately, it is to support staff moving forward.
Duly noted. I will say I do think there's some wisdom in having some clarity so we know what it is that we're saying. Margaret.
I think it'd be fine for the board to vote tonight with the understanding that we're going to bring them back a document that might be more specific in September 13th. And if we do that as some sort of resolution that the board can adopt, then that makes it much easier for each of us to hand or email whoever we're talking with. Here's the document, here's the proof that this is what the board said. And so that's a fantastic solution or suggestion. Thank you, Eric. Getting this board to act by resolution can actually help in many circumstances. So I personally have no trouble with the motion going forward tonight, with the understanding that we'll bring a clarifying document back in September.
Great. So Eric, is your hand down or up again? Okay. All right. Is there any further discussion before we proceed with the roll call vote? Very good. Okay, so we have a motion by Kathleen, seconded by Evelyn. And Sarah, if you will roll call, please.
Commissioner Bell,
Aye.
Commissioner English,
Aye.
Commissioner Ferguson,
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes,
Aye.
Commissioner Lloyd,
And that is passed unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for the great questions. Thank you so much, Marie, for pulling all of this together and walking us through this. It was a great presentation and discussion, and also appreciate all the conversations that utilities and staff have been having together about utilities and planning have been having together about the implications of all of this. So thank you. I know we're just getting started step by step. It's big stuff.
I couldn't have done it without planning's input. So I'm glad that we are partnering on this, and we'll make it through. We'll figure it out.
Will do. Thanks, everyone. The next item we have is item number 4B, high importance emails discussion. I think this is going to be a brief topic. Mark, did you want to chime in on why you suggested we talk about this?
Sure. Yeah. Just as background information, Rob may not know this, for example. In the past, we've talked about process improvement where how we handle time-sensitive and urgent communications among the board members. And I know with a recent event in town, we had some rapid back and forth that went between staff and the board, and even a couple of citizens who were providing information. So probably just a good time for us to touch base to talk about to remind us what are the best ways to share that information so that we're not creating churn is the word, where there's duplicative information going back and forth and maybe confusing or disrupting staff when they're trying to respond to something that's urgent. We don't want to get in the way of being able to respond to things in an urgent way. So yeah, I guess just have a little reminder of what are the best practices and do we need to do anything different about that? For example, when an event happens and Eric pushes out a piece of urgent information that he's heard from, the fire department or the police chief, and it comes to us, and three of us have questions. What is the most efficient way to do that? Does the mayor want to be the gatekeeper, kind of the centralizer of that information, or is there some other way that we can manage that information to make it easier for everybody to digest it as well as to respond to it when necessary?
Thanks, Mark. And I think that I would jump in to respond to that as just to add an offer that the practice that we had before I was the mayor was that board members would filter their questions to Tom, so that then, to the mayor. So when Tom was the mayor, we filtered them to Tom. And if he wasn't available, sometimes he would say to the mayor pro tem, I'm not going to be here if something happens, then you're the person who receives these questions. And I think that that's a good practice for if, whatever the issue is, that if people have not just necessarily questions, but also ideas, because sometimes when people, there's different skill sets on the board, and people, all the time have really important ways of thinking about things or looking at things that, add to or help understand whatever it is we might be talking about. So those are important. But if those come to the mayor and then the mayor can communicate those, kind of in batches to the town manager, then I think it keeps some of the kind of overwhelm and or confusion that can happen that Mark, you were alluding to when you're speaking. Bob.
I just want to remind everybody to be mindful of the open meetings law and do not conduct remote email meetings. Don't reply to all if you can avoid it.
Yes, thanks, Bob. And I think that's the other important reminder is sometimes, we don't want to get in danger of doing that when we're just trying to figure things out. Rob.
I'm just wanting to, and I apologize for my ignorance on this. Can you explain that in basic language, Bob? I try not to reply to all, but what is that actually? What are the parameters, I guess, with that?
When the board starts communicating with each other via email in kind of a reply to all setting, it's as if you're conducting a meeting that is not a regular meeting. It's not been noticed as a special or emergency meeting. And if you are making decisions, doing town business during this, sometimes it may be within a matter of 15 minutes, you've got a whole conversation going. I mean, that's essentially a public meeting. And it's not, you're not supposed to conduct business that way. So one of the ways to do that is if you have a conduit such as the mayor, then you can avoid the ongoing conversation with everybody at the same time.
Thank you.
Hopefully that helps.
Matt, and then Mark.
I certainly don't want, how do I say this? I certainly don't want staff to feel overwhelmed as well, nor do I necessarily want, the mayor, whether it's Mayor Weaver today or Mayor Smith, 10 years from now, to, feel as if there's some gatekeeping that's going on. I think we kind of have over time just collectively agreed, and sometimes we get lax and sometimes we don't, or we're more stringent on ourselves in terms of, who do we reach out to, how frequently do we reach out to them? I think some of us kind of serve in some capacities regionally where we might have more interaction naturally with certain staff members, that it makes a lot of sense for them to, go directly to that staff member. I think and maybe this is just, the MPA side coming out of me, but I really think, having something kind of written that we can all look at and agree, okay, that's what we have, a shared understanding of how we want to, work with communications with staff, so that they're not overwhelmed, and, questions we should ask ourselves, is this urgent? Can it wait? When is it fine for us to go directly to a staff member versus, channeling something through the mayor? Not something super detailed, maybe a page, but where, we all look at it and say, okay, yes, we this is our shared understanding of, how we want communication to flow. And maybe it's not just between individual board members and staff, but maybe, ourselves as well, right? Because sometimes we get those emails and there's a reply all, and I'm like, I should not have replied all. And I'm going to be cursed for it for the next 3 hours. So that's kind of what I'm kind of thinking about. Again, just so we can have that, kind of shared understanding of what we're talking about and how we're going to use it.
Thank you, Matt. It's not a bad idea. It's a good idea. Mark, and then Eric.
Two things. One, I just want to, in response to what Matt just said, I want to be sure that what we're talking about tonight is just in an emergency situation, like when the mill caught fire, or if when one of our firefighters died in the line of duty, and it's kind of a high priority, urgent kind of communication versus the regular kind of communication. And the second thing is, who decides when it's an emergency and when, how do we get notified? Let's say that Eric, something happens, a fire truck has been badly damaged, and that's an expensive item, and he might want to let us know as soon as possible that this unexpected thing has happened that will have an impact on us. So when does that go through, the responses to that go through the mayor versus just a reply all? So that's a question to Eric. How can we help you manage the communication?
Oh, thanks. So a few thoughts. Oversimplification, like in regular situations, the manager, or if Margaret or Jen are acting as the manager, regularly shoot you emails, text, calls, whatever. That's fine. That's manageable. No issues, no concerns that I can think of right now. And I have completely lost track of what I'm going to call a dynamic event. And because my brain is fried from COVID and probably everything else, it just seems like we've had more and more situations happen during the day where I'll shoot the board an email and this is going on or this is happening. And these are becoming more like events where we would turn into using the incident command system. So as Mayor Jen mentioned, we started when Mayor Stevens was there during these weather events. It was too much for me because I'm usually serving as the incident commander during a weather event, but then I send something out to the board and I'm getting 6 board members sending me things. I'm trying to manage it. And so when we switch to whoever's the mayor becomes the point of contact when things really get dynamic. And so that's sort of in my mind, super simple. I don't think we need to write anything up. It's either like things are getting crazy because there's an event downtown, the crisis of the day where people are going crazy. I can simply say, all right, we're going into dynamic mode. Anything, if the board can route it through the mayor at this point, that makes it easier for me. And a couple of these things I've had recently, everybody's trying to be helpful and go, what about this? Have you done this? What about this? And I miss stuff all the time and get tunnel vision in a crisis. So that feedback from the board is really important. But when I'm getting it from 6 different angles, plus trying to manage everything else, I can't do anything. So I think that's sort of thing I had mentioned to the mayor and Mark in a conversation. They said, well, let's just talk about it as a group. So if we just, one of us throws up the warning flare, say, hey, things are getting crazy, route everything through the mayor or acting mayor, that should solve it and be easy. Sorry if I made that long-winded.
Dynamic situation. I like that. Matt.
I was just going to say thank you, Commissioner Bell, for the clarification. I think we all kind of have like different interpretations of what's urgent, and so when I read that, I was kind of like, trying to determine what was urgent, but specifically with the example of the incident that we're talking about, I think that makes a lot of sense. Or weather related issues, I think that also makes a lot of sense. Anytime there's an evolving situation, I think it makes sense that the manager and the mayor work together in tandem on communication and getting it out to us, and utilizing that BCC line to prevent the report pie all would be very helpful. And if there are any questions, that we do just route them back through Mayor Jen to convey to, whether it's Eric or our communications folks, or Chief Hampton, or whomever happens to be the touch point on the situation. So thank you for clarifying. I thought it was just a more general thing. I think our tolerance for urgency is varied, as we all are, about what we consider urgent. So thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Eric.
Thanks. One thing going forward might help, and maybe if, going back to the budget process, Chief Hampton had mentioned that he's always looking at different options as far as like improving the structure of the Hillsborough Police Department, and he was interested in them possibly taking on emergency management functions for the town. Usually that happens in a fire department, but Orange Rural is separate from us. But police, they use incident command in these structures more often. And as far as like succession planning going, over the years, it's fallen into my lap. And while we're not nearly as organized as I think we should be and need to be, just because of my background at the coast and working through a lot of events, those things have fallen in my lap. But from a succession planning standpoint and just doing it better, if we end up, I don't know if that's the right solution, but if that was the solution, that frees me up and gives me a little bit more bandwidth, where I don't we don't have to do this handoff as much, because then I can be the bridge between the incident commander and the board. But until we get to that point, just throwing up the warning or help flag and we're going into dynamic mode is great.
All right, cool. Mark, has this accomplished what you were seeking?
Yeah, it's been very helpful.
Great, good.
Thanks for your contributions.
All right, thanks everyone. Moving on to item number 5, other business. Have any other business? All right, seeing and hearing none. Committee updates and reports. Kathleen.
Oh, I'm not used to going first. Not much to report, just a reminder for folks that we do have the regional summit, which there's been save the dates in October. I highly encourage, as I do every year, it really is useful. Last year it was online, and it focused on racial equity and how we apply that in public policy, and also how the sandbox comes out. And the sandbox right now is the circular sustainability of construction and building, which is right now there's so much waste that comes out of construction and building, and really looking at how we can eliminate that waste and support more sustainability. So that there'll be more on that, and keep an eye out on. And we did have the presentation on the point in time count, the data for partnership. Much of that information this board has seen in Corey's earlier presentation. And That's pretty much about it, other than the reentry council continues. There's a continual flow of events, and there's a habitat dedication to Odie Street, which is going to be really exciting.
Thank you, Kathleen. Evelyn.
One of the fire boards, or the rural fire board, opened the, shoot, can't even think where they are. The, I guess the bids for the new fire department could be at Waterstone. We're not sure at this point. It should be at Waterstone. And so there was no decision reached. We will carry on to the next meeting, which is the 15th of next month. We have 60 days, I think, to reply from the day that the bids were open. And Margaret, do you remember?
I see Margaret nodding at the 60 days.
It was 60, but I don't know when it started. So at least we've got about a month and a half, maybe.
I'm sorry, are you saying that that there's a possibility we would not have the fire station at Waterstone?
Well, we haven't voted, and we have one verbal person on the board who makes it difficult for anybody to come to a vote. I don't have a vote. So I sit there and I want to say, but in fact, I gave a lecture, which was worse than the one on Northern Fairview. But I think we'll have a vote by next time. And that I think there's one person that probably would like to have it somewhere else, but there is no other place because it's been searched. There just isn't. So that's it.
Yeah, the bids were open on the 10th. So you've got the Orange Rural Fire Board. Let's be clear who has the decision-making authority here. The Orange Rural Fire Board has 60 days from August 10th to make a decision about whether to award the
Not us,
contract.
the Orange Rule. I said that, thought I said that. And the bids were opened.
Thank you, Evelyn. Rob.
I don't have much. Parks Recreation Board met last week, and moving forward, they're focusing on park master plan updates, community connectivity update, which are all somewhat tied to comprehensive sustainability plan in many ways too, but focusing on kind of priorities and future projects that board would like to see happen. That's it.
Cool. Thank you. Matt.
No updates for me.
All right. Mark. Look, go ahead, Mark, and then we'll get back to you, Rob.
Okay, mine is quick. The Visitors Bureau met last week, and we had a couple new people come on the board, and kind of a detailed report because we took the month of July off. We heard from Lori Policelli about kind of the state of affairs in tourism and kind of the economic development impact in the county to that. And she noted that in Chapel Hill, for example, restaurants closed during the pandemic, yet some opened up. And there are 3 new hotels that are in the queue to come online in the next year, despite the fact that this being the worst tourism year ever in terms of occupancy tax collections. And there is a new visitor center that is being built. And I'll share that information when we're getting closer to that being opened up. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Rob.
One thing I meant to mention too, and you all are aware of this too, but I just wanted to, it has to do with the Turnip Patch sculpture. And I just want to thank Margaret and Stephanie and Justin and all staff who had anything to do with that. It's amazing to be able to turn that around in less than a week and have a have a beautiful sculpture in the neighborhood park. So I haven't had a chance to see it in person, but I hear it looks great, and I look forward to that. So thank you all.
Awesome, Rob. Yes, thank you for mentioning that. I second all that. Thanks. And I had a fun experience where a very good friend of mine who grew up in Chapel Hill, but we met on the other side of the country in a former life. He was home visiting family last weekend, and I went over to visit him and his mother, and he said, "Oh, look, my friends, the Burnses, just moved these statues, I think, over to Hillsborough today," and showed me a picture that was taken the day with the family right before it was moved over here. So that it was just a really cool connection. So yeah, they're really awesome. And the only real update I have is MPO. You all may or may not have heard that the big news right now is that Spot 6 was canceled because committed projects were because of price increases. There was a deficit with committed prices to the tune of $3 to $8 billion. So that there's some reworking having to be done of the Spot, and there was discussion at the MPO about some frustration that there seems to be this was part of a bigger discussion, but there seems to be money that can always be found for these really big highway projects, and communities are really asking for really voicing the need for transportation projects and bike ped projects, and that's a very consistent message from our MPO. So anyway, it was a fine discussion, but there's going to be more delays on some projects. So that's kind of the big news, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that. And the mayor's task force met last week with some report backs from 2 small groups with some initial drafts of recommendations that they had. Then there's some refining going, and we'll be coming back together in September. And I believe that the group is very close to pulling together something comprehensive to be sending to the board and the manager and to Chief Hampton and to Bob and kind of all the relevant parties that need to weigh in and think about those more. And sorry, I've got my agenda elsewhere. That's it for updates. We only have 1 item left, unless there are any other updates or reports from staff.
I move to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second, moved by Matt, seconded by Mark.
Commissioner Bell,
Aye.
Commissioner English,
Aye.
Commissioner Ferguson,
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes,
Aye.
Commissioner Lloyd,
Uh,
And it's unanimous. Have a great evening, everyone. See you soon.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Aye.